you're hearing the left discuss more and more that look at all these people Trump are appointing. They're all loyalists to Donald Trump. Is there anybody in the Biden camp right now, in the Biden administration, the Biden cabinet, who isn't a loyalist? They watched Joe Biden for 4 years be completely incompetent, completely incapable, not know where he is, and incapable of running the country, and not a one of them spoke up. All cowards, all of them loyalists, all of them kissing the ring. Of course it should be Trump's agenda moving forward and leading. Of course it's Trump saying this is what we're doing, and they're needing to follow that agenda.
All right, guys, I hope you had a great weekend. This is the beginning of the holiday season. I'm going to explain to you my little concerns in just a second, but needless to say, a lot to get to. Trump has almost completed his cabinet. Lots of new names coming out over the weekend. I'll talk to you about that. Some crazy attacks coming the way. Anyway, the panels here is going to be amazing. Before I get to that, I want to tell you about my friends at Just Thrive. We have a big conversation going on about the MAHA movement. We had Alex Clark here last week. I know so many people are trying to get healthier and better. If you remember my interview with Tina Anderson from Just Thrive, she kind of informed me, hey, Sean, I know you've been taking a probiotic, but you're probably taking the wrong one. They've got a great line of products over at Just Thrive, including Just Calm and their probiotic. The cool thing is they are based on research, which ensures that those things that you take, especially the probiotic, gets through your stomach, actually can help you, because so many of the probiotics on the market don't do that. Not the ones from Just Thrive. They are amazing. I actually take the gummy, and because it tastes like a piece of candy, and I like it. And Tina swears that it's got all of the great stuff. But the cool thing is, if you want a healthy gut, it affects so much: your immune system, your sleep, your skin, your mood. So take a probiotic that works. Take the Just Calm, because it's amazing. And for a limited time, you can try any of these Just Thrive products, the probiotic or the Just Calm, and save 20% on your first order. Just head to justthrivehealth.com. justthrivehealth.com. Use promo code SPICER for 20% off. And my guys, if you're thinking about maybe trying to make wellness part of your New Year's resolution, get ahead of the curve. Get it now. Go to justthrivehealth.com. All right. We are kicking off the holiday season, and I know a lot of you hear the left talk about happy holidays versus Merry Christmas. Now, I don't want to get into it now, but I'm very big stickler on the fact that you don't say Merry Christmas, play Christmas music, or put up a tree prior to Thanksgiving. Give Thanksgiving its due, then get fully into the Christmas season, and you can focus on it. I don't want to dilute the Christmas season. It's too important. So, but check this out. A new map shows how divided the country is. Look at where the winners live. All of us who say Merry Christmas, well, we're winners this year. The Happy Holiday crew, not so strong. Anyway, I want to go over a lot of the new picks, especially in the MAHA area, CDC, Surgeon General, so much coming our way. A lot to be excited if you're into wellness, because Washington's about to get rocked. There are some attacks on Tulsi Gabbard, as the media would say, without evidence. The left is now saying that she's a tool of the Russian government, that she is compromised, an agent of Russia, without evidence. She's a lieutenant colonel in the armed forces. And somehow we're attacking her because you don't like her stances on some stuff. What happened to without evidence, all the folks in the media? I guess it's okay if you're attacking somebody that you don't like or somebody that left your party because they knew how wrong you were. We'll get into that, but it's amazing. And by the way, it was funny, for the longest time, RFK was considered kooky for talking about fluoride in the water. And now suddenly the Today Show this morning runs a whole segment on fluoride in the water, how it may be, controversial, and there's new stuff. It's kind of crazy how that all happened. Plus, immigration policies. I'm going to tell you why they're a big hit, talk about with the panel. Before I get to that, I don't know about you. If you start off your morning with a great cup of coffee, then try one from the folks from Wired to Fish. They source all their beans from Mexico and Guatemala, Arabica beans, amazing taste. But better than that, and this is what I love, is you get a great cup of coffee consistent with your values. When you go to Starbucks, I hate to tell you this, I think it's a bad cup of coffee, and it's going to a bunch of woke policies that are inconsistent with most of our values. The folks at Wired to Fish give 25% of their profits to faith-based initiatives and clean water initiatives. I can live with that. I like that. That, to me, is where I want to spend. Instead of just voting for change, which we did in November, vote with your wallet for companies that support our values. Wired to Fish is right in that wheelhouse. Great coffee, great product with a good cause. Go to wired2fishcoffee.com, wired2fish.com, and use code WECARE for 15% off. All right. without further ado, let's start the week off strong with our panel. Amber Duke, the host of The Hill Rising, and editor over at The Spectator. Tony Katz, the host of the Tony Katz Show, and the voice of Indianapolis. I mean, let's just face it, that's who
The
he
Midwest.
is. The Midwest. Yeah, he's taking over the entire Midwest. And Sarah Gonzalez, who owns most of Texas now. She's the voice of Texas down there, the host of Sarah Gonzalez Unfiltered on The Blaze. Guys, great to see you. I felt like the weekend, like Trump must have been like, hey, Saturday, I've got a lot going on. Let's just announce all these guys real quick. I mean, you've got Pam Bondi at DOJ, Russ Vought at OMB, Scott Besset at Treasury, Scott Turner at HUD, Seb Gorka, our buddy, going to the National Security Council, Alex Wong going to the National Security Council, and then Brooke Rollins, the head of America First, the Policy Institute, the former domestic policy coordinator for the White House as the USDA pick. And then he's got Dr. Marty McCreary, a Johns Hopkins surgeon for FDA chief, former Fox News contributor Dr. Jeanette Neshwat as Surgeon General, and Dave Weldon, former congressman and doctor from Florida, to direct the CDC. Sarah, I mean, I feel like it's flood the zone, like, and I'm excited about all these picks.
Yeah, I am as well. And I think that, you see, of course, RFK, who was previously announced, but you see, I think, the influence that RFK has had, particularly on, of course, Dave Weldon and Marty McCreary. So for FDA and CDC. And I think that reflects in these particular picks. Look, if I were to nitpick, I do have some questions about Pam Bondi's 2A stance. I do have some questions about Dr. Jeanette's prior COVID stances. But overall, I think these are really strong picks because you're looking at a president who has done this before, and he can look at the mistakes that he made the last time around. He can look at the mistakes that he made trusting the wrong people the last time around, because as he's mentioned, he came into this not knowing anyone. He came into this, asking the wrong people for advice, for picks. And now you have someone who is on the other side of this, 91 indictments later, 2 assassination attempts later, ready to hit the ground running. And I think that that's what you're seeing in all of these picks, that he is, just, as you mentioned, flood the zone. I thought I was going to have a weekend, Sean, and I didn't have a weekend. I didn't have a weekend because he can't stop naming names. I'm like, I just wanted some free time, and I haven't had that since the election. But I'm really, really excited.
I want to get back to the picks because I want to hear what Tony Katz. But Amber, I know that maybe this is Sean being nitpicky, okay? But the media kept saying the cabinet is complete. The cabinet is complete. The cabinet's not complete. I don't mean to be like, the U.S. Trade Rep is a member of the cabinet. That's not chosen. The administrator of the Small Business Administration is not chosen. And I again, maybe you're just like, hey, get over it. We won, and stop being so nitpicky. But when the media all weekend kept saying Trump's cabinet is complete, it's not. That's a lie. It's misinformation. And maybe I'm just so triggered by how much they spread misinformation that I want to get this out. But I kind of feel like when I started to say, when they were like, the cabinet's complete, I was like, wait a second, who's the USTR? Who's the SBA administrator?
I feel like they're saying that because they so desperately want it to be filled, because they are probably getting triggered every single time a new name is announced. They're like, no, not him. No, not her. Please let it be finished. But yeah, I mean, this is classic. When they're not smearing some of the nominees, then they're trying to pretend that the cabinet's filled at this point. It's obviously ridiculous. I, like Sarah, am excited about a lot of these picks, especially Dr. Marty McCreary. He has shown himself to be someone who's willing to question health orthodoxy. If you haven't read his latest book, Blind Spots, it is an absolute must read, especially for women out there who are interested in things like fertility and health as they get older. He challenges so many narratives that have been pushed throughout the medical community. It's incredible. But I think what's really different...
What's the name of the book?
Blind Spots.
Blind Spot.
It's so good. I read it this summer. True, I learned so much. But also, the other thing that's so interesting about this slate of cabinet picks is how quickly, of course, we've been getting them all. Trump was clearly ready to go, right? This is not 2016 scrambling to throw together something at the behest of Reince Priebus. Trump had a lot of these names ready to go. He clearly is excited about them. He can't help himself from releasing them all over the weekend, and I think it's great.
Tony, you heard some of the names get tossed around. Is there anybody, one, that you're excited about that got named, or second, that you're like Sarah mentioned, that you're maybe a little hesitant of?
So when Sarah brings up Pam Bondi, the former attorney general of Florida, I think that her 2A stance, specifically, I think it was red flag laws, right? Like that was
yes.
that's something to be concerned by. I'm
Yeah.
a guy who, when first I heard about red flag laws, the idea that a family can help somebody who's mentally ill get adjudicated, go through a judge, and not be able to get a firearm, okay, that logically makes sense. And then you see how states take advantage of it and try and take away the rights of people. You're like, okay, we can't have this. We can't do this. We can't have nice things in America because people don't know how to act appropriately. I think it's correct to ask Pam Bondi about these questions. When we take a look at Tulsi Gabbard, I'm not sold on Tulsi Gabbard. I think that has to be the most sober confirmation that takes place. Not everything is a winner. Now, for me, I'm a no on Robert F. Kennedy Jr. I think he could talk about health. I think he can be a voice from the outside. I don't want him anywhere in the administration because his history is a history of radical progressivism, a guy who wanted to throw you in jail if you weren't somebody who believed in climate change. I've been in the room where he's talked about reapportioning dollars, which is to say wealth redistribution. That's not a cabinet guy. The fact that on children's health and some other things, he's got good things to say, he's making sense, then let him do just that from the outside, like Ramaswamy and Musk. But I think the one that is going to give him the most pressure is Chavez Demerer, the
Labor Secretary.
Oregon, right? One-term Republican being nominated for Secretary of Labor, as you just said, Sean. And this is somebody who favored the PRO Act. This is somebody who favors unions on unions.
Oh, yeah. She was supported, by the way. The Teamsters were all behind her. I mean,
yeah. So that's a no. That's just.
Right, can I go back? Look, I want to go back to what you raised on RFK real quick. Just show of hands. Are you, if you were a U.S. senator and got to vote, how would you vote on RFK? Let's go through the dais. The gentleman from Indianapolis votes
nay.
The gentlelady from Texas.
Oh, wait. Oh, hell nay. That's
yeah. Yeah. I'm sorry. I'm voting yes. I have children and I've been following RFK for a while on health and I'm a big yes.
Amber, I'm assuming you're, are you in the Commonwealth of Virginia or DC?
I am, yes.
Okay, good. All right. So the gentlelady from Virginia, how does she vote?
She votes yes.
Okay. The reason I think this is interesting is a brand new poll out that shows from CBS, 80% of Republicans support RFK, 47% of Democrats. But here's the thing that's fascinating about Tony Katz's position. He gets a higher approval rating from Republicans than, say, Marco Rubio, who's a Republican, right? So this guy's a Democrat. I will say look, let me dial this back. I believe that the big difference that Amber was pointing out about this crop versus the last one is people got appointed last time and it was like, okay, go off and do your thing. And Donald Trump this time's like, I don't care who you are. You're here to implement my agenda, not yours. So I will give some of them some leeway as long as they understand that it's Trump that got elected. It's Trump's agenda, not theirs. Okay. That being said, I'm more concerned about life issues with Kennedy. I'm with Sarah on the Maha stuff. Like, I think that Bobby Kennedy has shown a huge spotlight on conflicts of interest, on issues about what doctors know and don't know, how they administer health. Okay, I am concerned about his lack of concern for the right of the unborn. And that's where I have an issue with Bobby. And as long as he can say, I understand it's not my agenda, I'm okay with it. But Tony Katz, is there any persuading you on Bobby?
No, not there. There is no persuading me on Bobby Kennedy. But the argument you're making is, by the way, the correct argument. You're hearing the left discuss more and more that look at all these people Trump are appointing. They're all loyalists to Donald Trump. Is there anybody in the Biden camp right now, in the Biden administration, the Biden cabinet, who isn't a loyalist? They watched Joe Biden for 4 years be completely incompetent, completely incapable, not know where he is, and incapable of running the country, and not a one of them spoke up. All cowards, all of them loyalists, all of them kissing the ring. Of course, it should be Trump's agenda moving forward and leading. On that, I give you that point. That is very solid. Of course, it's Trump saying this is what we're doing, and they're needing to follow that agenda.
I love that point, by the way. That, it's so important. Like number one, Biden's cabinet is completely complicit. They cover it up a lot. But number two, do you want the subject to be like, President Trump appointed someone to be fill in the blank today who completely hates him and is opposed to his agenda? I mean, that's
which is what he did. That's what he did the first time around. That's what came back to bite him in the butt whenever he did this the first time around. Was he had constant leaks. He had, New York Times anonymous op-eds about how they needed to remove him from presidency. He was plagued with that his entire presidency last time around. So of course he's going to have loyalists. It's such a ridiculous talking point.
I am most excited in a dorky way about Russ Vought taking over OMB because, Amber, the thing is, I feel like all of this talk about change stems from whether or not you have the budget to execute it or not. So whether you like Bobby Kennedy and what they can do at Maha, or reducing the deficit, or taking on China, or making sure that we have the tools we need at the Defense Department, it all stems from budget authority. You need money to do things. And Russ Vought gets it.
He does. And I worked with OMB when I was covering the White House under Trump the first time around. And I was always very impressed with how much he understood the process and how far he was willing to go to try to implement Trump's agenda. He was never sitting there saying, we can't do it. He was thinking creatively about how to respond to the things that Trump wanted to do. At the end of his term, they had managed to have a lot of budget cuts related to China, which got really undercovered. But they basically ended a bunch of these foreign aid programs related to China through OMB. And in the meantime, since the last administration, he's been running the Center for American Renewal, which has been on the outside trying to advance Make America Great Again and America First policies as well. So I think it's a great pick to have somebody in there who really knows the levers that he can push in order to help Trump out. That's the type of role where you need somebody with some experience.
Sarah, you mentioned how it was the first time. So let's divide this into season 1 and season 2. If you look back, how do you think season 2 is going to be different from season 1?
Well, I mean, we're already seeing the beginnings of that. As we're talking about, he's hitting the ground, totally running. He's thought this out. I mean, I've talked with people who were in the running, even the final 2 selection for some of these cabinet positions. And they told me they were having these conversations beginning in June, July. I mean, beginning in the summer, they're already talking with the Trump team. So the Trump team was already heavily vetting these people. They knew what they wanted to do. They knew the direction that they wanted to go in, and they are ready to implement this because they see that the people are hungry for this America First agenda. And not to mention, we're like on the verge of World War III, right? We've got Joe Biden just increasing all of this tension between Russia and Ukraine, flooding in all of these illegal immigrants with this new, app where they can just bypass even meeting anyone from Customs and Border Protection in person. I mean, he's intentionally making our country less safe and making the world less safe. And I think Donald Trump looks at that and knows I've got a job to do and we've got to hit the ground running on day one. I have a lot to accomplish in a very short amount of time. And I just think that he has seen what happens when you have the wrong people implementing your agenda or not implementing your agenda, as it turned out for him. And I think that he sees the shortfalls. I think that he sees, even with COVID, Sean, I talk to a lot of people and I have complaints about how Donald Trump handled COVID. But rather than asking for a personal apology for the people that he put in charge that did wrong things, Anthony Fauci, Deborah Birx, what did he do? He has like the biggest COVID skeptic in charge of health now, right? He has Dave Weldon. He has all of these people. So I think that he really understands what time it is, and he's ready to deliver to the American people what he promised that he was going to do.
There's also a CBS YouGov poll that dropped either yesterday or today that says 59% of Americans support the way Trump is handling the transition. This is just greater evidence of the fact that he does have a mandate for this.
Tony, I think that day one, I mean, I remember my day one. He signed like 25 executive orders, and we kind of, I think that this is like, I've said the phrase before, buckle up, baby. I don't think people have any sense of how intense the afternoon of January 20th is going to be. He is going to, whether it's immigration, trans stuff, we'll get to that in a minute. I just, policy after policy, they're not waiting. And to Sarah's point, I think the biggest difference and the biggest understated thing that is not getting talked about is that they spent the last 4 years planning this. And like, okay, if we ever get the keys to the car again, we're ready to go. We know exactly where we're going. We know the route. We know where we're going to stop. I mean, this is not going to be like last time where we were kind of like, making it up as we went. They know what they're doing and how to come out of the chute.
This is, I would argue, for a lot of us, maybe for all of us, the first time we're going to see Republicans taking control and acting like Democrats. We've got an agenda. We're going full steam ahead. We're going to run over your mother. We don't care what you say. We don't care what you think. We're going to pass this. We're going to pass that. We're going to laugh at you on this one. Then we're going to pass the next one. Then we're going to have lunch. Then we're going to pass this, and we're going to pass this. And then we're going to have ourselves a light snack because we're on a diet. And then we're going to cut spending. And then by the end of the day, we're all going to have a beer. It's that level of aggression is probably, I think, for the people who have been supportive of Trump from the beginning, and all those people, whether they're low propensity voters or independents who came over for Trump, this is the part they're going to be most thrilled by, that it's just happening. No talk, no bluster, no, hey, how good do I look in my suit for the television camera? Get it done, get it done, get it done. What's next? That, I think, is absolutely it. That's the differentiator.
All right, we talked a lot about the nominees. There's another great person I want to tell you about, and then I want to talk about the policies. But you guys have heard me talk about my buddy Leo Grillo from Delta Rescue. He's an amazing guy. He started the journey that he's been going down now, rescuing one dog, a Doberman. He named it Delta, and then he thought, wow, I can do a lot more, and I don't need a government program to do it. So he founded Delta Rescue. It takes care of abandoned, malnutrition, abused animals, dogs, cats, horses, and he makes sure they get all the care they need. It's amazing. If you go to deltarescue.org, they have a ton of videos. You can actually see the evolution of what he's created. It's a no-kill sanctuary for life. It's not a shelter. It's not a way station. They're not looking to adopt all these animals. They're looking to take care of them for life. And that's so super cool how he's done this and what he's done. So if you can help Delta Rescue, please go to deltarescue.org. Check out the videos. Please make a donation. That's how Leo Grillo is able to do this. But more importantly, at the top, you'll see an estate planning kit. Do me a huge favor. Just hit the download button, print it out, take a look at it. And if you've got some stocks, a 401k, talk with your tax advisor. There may be a tax benefit to you making a contribution within your will or your estate to Delta Rescue. So go to deltarescue.org, check it out. All right, we talked about the people. Let me talk about the policy for a second. Amber, the CBS Gov poll that you referred to says that 57% of Americans support President Trump's policy to deport all illegals. 57% support that. This to me is mind-blowing. Like, what a sea change we've had from everybody cowering about this to finally, I mean, that's almost 2/3 of the country saying, yeah, we're a nation of laws. We welcome immigrants legally, but if you're not here legally, you need to get out.
Yeah, I'm surprised by it too, but I've had people on my show Rising who are either libertarian or on the left say to me, "Do you think that they really mean that?" And each time a poll comes out, the number is consistent, right? It's been this way for the past 6 months. It hasn't moved at all. If anything, it's gone up. So yeah, I think they really do mean it. And I've also had some of these people come up to me privately and say, "Do you think he's really going to do it?" And look, I mean, there's already a built-in group of about 1.5 million people who have deportation orders who have not been removed. That's easy. Step one. Step two, get the people who have committed crimes in the United States with the help of ICE. Step three, get the people who committed crimes in their home countries, have a criminal record and need to go back. And then you start moving on to the next stage if you have time to get there, right? This is obviously a huge, massive undertaking, but there's no question that the American people have seen the impact that this massive wave of illegal immigration has had on crime in their communities, the culture, the economics, right? These people are effectively indentured servants in our country because they work for wages that no American would ever dream of. And you hear from the left, the supposedly anti-corporate left, saying that, well, who's going to clean our toilets if we got rid of illegal immigrants? Who's going to pick our fruit? How about we actually pay people a reasonable wage and have workers' benefits and give those jobs to Americans? It's not that Americans won't do the jobs, it's that they won't do them for the conditions that you think are acceptable for brown people. So it's just amazing to hear them suddenly be in the pro-corporate stance of benefiting big businesses with the help of basically slave labor.
Sarah, the thing about that is where to pull the thread on Amber, because I agree. I mean, to me, this is silly. You got Democrats saying, hey, let's leave them in the shadows where they make, a ridiculous wage in horrible conditions. because, well, no one else will do it, as opposed to having a bigger conversation about what we should be doing. But the bigger question I have is, do the polls, I mean, this is what Amber was starting with, do the polls change the second that the media does these stories about roundups in communities and these people being deported and families being broken up, which is what they're going to do? Let's face it. The NBC's already got the package put together, and they're basically trying to write the story that little so-and-so was, her parents are here illegally. She was born, and now we're going to separate them. And oh, goodness gracious. So once that happens, does either A, the polling change, or B, does that change how the Trump administration does it?
Well, I think that, yes, it is going to shift a little bit as far as the polls go, because I think there are a lot of, touchy-feely people who they're not going to like the optics of it. There's going to be some pictures that, make them feel uncomfortable. But the fact of the matter is, this is something that has to happen. And I think that the Trump administration needs to go full steam ahead and remind people every single time there is some sort of a hit piece that takes place, remind people, I don't like this either. But the fact of the matter is, if you want to blame someone, you blame Joe Biden and Kamala Harris for allowing this to escalate to the point that it did. And I think that they need to continue to push that messaging to people that this isn't Donald Trump not liking brown people, right? This is a hard reset that this country needs. And by the way, Texas has been feeling this for a while. And one of the greatest things that Greg Abbott, in the moment, I hated it because I wanted these people to just leave the country. But one of the greatest things that Greg Abbott and the mayor of El Paso and Ron DeSantis and all of these people did was shuffle all of these illegals over to New York City, over to Chicago, we're all border states now, right? And so now the American people are feeling the effects. And so I think at the end of the day, the polling shifts a little bit. But once you finally go through these stages that Amber was talking about, once you finally make America safer and we don't have, Laken Rileys happening every week, as it seems, I think the American people will look back and they will reflect and they will go, okay, it looked bad. It felt uncomfortable at the time, but Donald Trump made this country more safe and more prosperous and did what needed to be done because Joe Biden refused to do it. And so I think that they will the reflection will be, of course, okay, he needed to do it. It's going to be uncomfortable. It's going to be bumpy throughout, but just buckle up and hold on because this has to be done.
Tony, I think that how they do it will matter, right? I mean, Amber was saying, start with all of the criminals, start with the people. I mean, that in itself will take a while. And then I do think there's an element of self-deportation, which is I'm going, okay, I'd rather get out before I get pushed out, or I'm not going to come over the border because it's pretty obvious what's happening in America. I mean, Joe Biden put an open sign up on America and said, by the way, we pay you to come. I think now that Trump's in office, a lot of folks say, I might as well get out while I can and do it on my own terms, or I'm not going to come either. But there's going to be a big shift in this.
Yeah, so we were talking about self-deportation versus self-control. Self-control is not crossing the border illegally to begin with. Self-deportation is, I better leave now because if I don't, there might be a penalty, and therefore things will be more difficult for me if I should want to come back to the country and stay. But to Amber's point, the elitist who can't get their bathroom cleaned, this is that in and of itself is a great story because it's how they view the world and how they view people, how they view this imposition on their life and on their station that they believe that they are entitled to. But I want to go to this part too. There are jobs Americans won't do. And to deny that, I think we're out of our heads. They're not going to be going to these farms that are on the border and they're not going to be picking lettuce. That isn't going to happen. That isn't a reason not to engage the deportations of people.
I disagree with that though, Tony.
Hold on. Let me finish the thought and then I want to hear it. Absolutely not a reason to engage the deportations, and 100% not a reason to deal with these farms hiring people who are here illegally, paying them under the table, not engaging in fair business practices that we demand of everybody else across the country via regulation. We can create the programs that allow them to work in the United States, but there are indeed jobs Americans will not do. I don't think that's a shame. I don't think that's an embarrassment. I don't think that's a problem. I think it's just a reality to deal with.
Yeah, I mean, I just disagree with that. If you look at Center for Immigration Studies statistics, there is not a single occupation in the United States that is majority immigrant, including the agricultural industry. Obviously, tons of Americans pick produce. That shouldn't be a shock to anybody. The question is, are Americans willing to do it for 12 hours a day under threat of being kicked out if they don't pick a certain amount of lettuce, right? That's the question. It's about working conditions and wages, not the job itself.
I think it's about TikTok and Instagram. If you have an entire generation that sees itself making money from being an influencer, not actually creating an actual day's work, if you will, because there's more dollars in it, because the work that you're discussing is a serious grind of work. They're not showing up to do it. Never mind not moving to those border areas. I'm not denying the statistic. I'm stating that there's a reality that says if these people are not here, you're going to have less people doing the work.
Can I stake out a middle ground? Which
You
is
can
part of the problem I have is that I think that there are certain jobs. I saw a piece with a farmer out in California who says that he pays among the highest rates and he still can't get American citizens to do the job. What I have a problem with is then they use that as an excuse to hire people illegally. What I think we should do is make the process legal, right? You come into this country, we know who you are, you register, you come in for a finite period of time to perform
seasonal
a
work
task.
visas.
Work visas, agriculture work
Yeah.
visas, and then you leave. But
Yep.
right now the problem is that they're in the dark, and we don't have a sense of who they're here, who's here, when they're in, when they're out, right? So the middle ground to me is to say, okay, California. I mean, this is sort of what we do with the tech industry and the H-1Bs, is we bring people over because there's a niche, right, that people can do, but we know who they are. Why not increase that so that we can track the number of people who are coming into the country? We know when they've left. And part of this is obeying the law, because right now they come in, they do a task, and then it becomes, oh, well, they've been here a while, so let's give them citizenship. We reward the bad behavior, not just of the immigrant who came here illegally, but of the employer who created the incentive.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and we have seasonal work visas now. The question is
Right.
whether we should increase the cap on how many we give out each year if those jobs are really need to be filled. And also the other thing we're not talking about is automation, right? A lot of these jobs are going to become automated with machinery over the years too. So you're not going to even need as many bodies in order to, pick the same amount of produce, since that's the analogy we're on.
I want to switch gears for a second and talk about the media. Elon at MSNBC is potentially getting spun off, that apparently, according to Comcast, they're going to spin off all of these other non-NBC properties. Elon threw out the idea of, should I buy it? I mean, I wonder, should I mean, not that it's my money, but like, I think it would be kind of rich to see a station like MSNBC get bought by one of these billionaires like Elon and then completely reformed.
What's the win?
Well,
I mean,
the win is, I mean, look, with cable, and I agree. I mean, it's a dying industry, but the bottom line is you get immediate distribution, right? So that's on dials everywhere. So when you buy it, you don't have to start from square one. You've got immediate distribution.
so if buying the carriage, which is how it's referred to in the industry, is that valuable? Okay, but this is a brand that has no worth. We can all agree that there is zero value to the name MSNBC. You would have to blow it up and start fresh. You'd have to have all new hosts. You'd have a whole new raison d'etre. You'd have to have a mission statement that was about, hey, we actually want to inform and entertain and not call you racists and bigots all day. This is what we want. And I don't know if that's worth the money when look what you're doing, Sean. Look at where we are right now. Why isn't this the model? And I don't know why Elon.
Oh, it is. I think this is the future. This is the model. I mean, this is what the Blaze is doing. I mean, we're all part of it. And that's why I get it. I'm with you. But I mean, I think that there is some value. In fact, I think it's, you mentioned the word entertainment. I think that there's something funny about Elon buying it and then sort of, kind of what he did with Twitter. He bought it. He reformed it. It's now a platform for free speech. And I'm like, can you imagine what he could do with MSNBC?
Well, that's where the value is. I think it's in just the demoralization of the left that would occur in the meltdown. But in terms of like
A lot of
turning
money
the
for
network
demoralization.
around and pulling a profit from advertisers and carriage fees, probably pretty slim.
You have to imagine, I mean, what is it like waking up as Elon Musk and being that rich, right? Like being that filthy rich. Maybe it is worth it to him just to giggle about it, right? Like,
I know.
which he would. Like, I don't know if it's worth it because I'm not the world's richest person, so I couldn't tell you. But if I had that money and that I could wipe my rear end with and be totally fine, I probably would buy it and just be like, I'm replacing all of you. You're all fired. I mean, just the joy that would give him being the world's richest man. I say go for it, Elon, please.
Would you fire Rachel Maddow or would you make her cover? Like, I think what would be almost better is to make her read copy, to be like, today Donald Trump did another great thing today. I'd feel like I'd almost keep her and just be like, I want you to read the following copy every day.
Yeah.
Didn't
would
Joe
love
Rogan
that.
say he would dress up as Rachel Maddow and do her show?
Yeah. Amber, let me ask you this. This is kind of I was thinking about this dynamic the other day. In 2016, Trump wins. And the cable ratings for MSNBC, CNN go way up. The Washington Post and New York Times get a ton of subscribers. Okay? Because they're the resistance to Trump. Democracy will die in darkness. Trump wins in 2020. The Washington Post is hemorrhaging money. $77 million they lost last year. Okay. The New York Times hemorrhaging subscribers. MSNBC on the chopping block. CNN is cutting salaries like it's, a sport. I think that to me, it's so fascinating how the dynamic has shifted, right? The first time it's like everybody wants to subscribe to these lefty publications like The Atlantic because that's, it's going to be the resistance. This time, they're flailing. They're literally, Joe and Mika are down in Mar-a-Lago like, please, sir, may we have some water?
Look, I think this is a classic case of fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. Because the first time around, everybody in the liberal elite circles who subscribes to these newspapers and these cable channels was shocked at Trump's win. And they wanted these papers to be their liberal Sherpas to guide them through the evil Trump administration and tell them how they were going to stop him. And unfortunately, in 2020, right, he did lose, depending on your perspective on that election. But this time around, you have these newspapers and cable networks again saying there's no way Trump can win. Biden's so great. Kamala's so great. The economy's not that bad, we promise. Actually, the economy's wonderful. Everyone's doing fantastic. The stock market's up. Everybody stop complaining. Immigrants are wonderful for this country, even if they're here illegally, blah, 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 blah. And then Trump not only wins, but wins even bigger than he did in 2016. I think if you have even a modicum of sanity left in your body, you look at that and go, oh my gosh, they lied to me again. I can't believe it. And you tune out.
Yeah.
But isn't it weirder that they haven't changed at all? Like, we're all observers, right? We're always checking in, getting the clips, doing the thing. Joy Reid hasn't changed her programming. And Maddow nor Hayes or anybody else has changed their programming. Nicole Wallace hasn't. None of these people have changed. And the guests they have on haven't changed in the slightest. They're still doing this. There was an interview with Representative Mfume of Maryland saying that the last thing we want is Trump to turn the Justice Department into the Just ICE Department, going after Black people and brown people and women. When you could see exit polling that shows Black and Hispanic Americans want to see a secure border. It's never mind just the people hosting or the people who've been watching. It's the people hosting who have learned nothing. They're still doing the same exact thing and somehow hoping this time we'll get them.
Well, Tony, to your point, I think it's because they're getting paid such an absurd amount of money. I mean, I've read Rachel Maddow makes like $30 million a year. Why would she has no incentive to change. She's getting filthy rich off of lying to the American people. Eventually that gravy train, as we're watching, is going to run out and she's going to have to be faced with, her decisions and what led to that. But I think that, to go back to Amber's point, and you're so right, Amber, I think the compounding factor too, to the American public finally going, okay, you can only lie to me so many times before I've just stopped listening. The compounding factor to that was the media constantly. Donald Trump is a white supremacist. Donald Trump is a racist. Donald Trump is a terrible person. Donald Trump is all of these mean things. And then he goes on Joe Rogan. He goes and talks to Theo Vaughn. He goes on all of these podcasts, these long form podcasts where the American public is getting to watch this man for themselves for an extended amount of time. And they're like, hold on a second. He doesn't seem like the guy that you guys are portraying him to be. JD Vance going on these podcasts, and they're like, this guy isn't weird at all, actually. So it's these long form podcasts that these men went on, and the American public got to see for themselves. You guys have been lying to me this entire time. These are two completely normal, very smart, capable individuals. He's not the white supremacist that you guys painted him to be for the last freaking 8 years of my life. So I think that has really woken people up as well.
By the way, I'm really interested to see what happens with the Washington Post and the Los Angeles Times because, of course, we hear from Jeff Bezos that he's trying to hire a new conservative columnist. He didn't allow the paper to endorse Kamala Harris. Same thing with the LA Times. And the billionaire owner of that paper, said that he's going to fire the entire editorial board. So I'm curious if it's too late for these papers to be saved.
Yeah, I
Could
think
I say really quickly, it couldn't happen to a more deserving group of people.
Right.
I know. By the way, I love the fact because I'm like, these billionaires are subsidizing the crazy lifestyle of a bunch of liberal journalists, and they're like, they don't have a right to do this. And it's like, dude, your model sucks. It fails financially. Democracy, it's not democracy dies in darkness. It's journalism dies in plain sight. You guys, the model isn't working and this gets back to the point that you guys are making, and I'm so glad you hit on this. They were wrong. They were wrong over and over again. They lied to us. They spread misinformation, starting with the Russia hoax, the Hunter Biden laptop, the election. He can't win. And then Tony Katz, I watched Meet the Press this weekend because I have to. I'm on step 7 of the step 10 program. I get it. But they have 4 people on a panel discussion that don't like Donald Trump. And that's not like my opinion. Like, they have been very clear. And so the panel is 4 people who don't like him. And the lion's share of the guests are Democrats talking about their opposition to Trump. So there's not even a modicum of an attempt to understand the Trump voter, the Trump supporters. It's, we'll just keep running the same playbook of how he's bad and wrong and the opposition to him. But when you do a panel discussion, and look, they have a right to do it. I don't care. But when you try to tell voters, we're going to dive deep into the Trump nomination, the process, and it's people who don't know him, who hate him, and don't have any connections to him, I think this is a continuation of the gaslighting that's been going on to viewers, why they're tuning out.
But if we're going to say gaslighting, now we're getting into what Sarah and Amber are talking about, and they're absolutely right. Let us not use the term wrong, because people could be wrong. They lied.
That's it.
They lied continually and completely. When we go back to the debate of Trump Biden, and it was the first time that anybody who watches only MSNBC saw Biden for what we knew him to be. None of us here, really the great majority of your audience, Sean, nobody here is surprised that Biden was incapable on a debate stage. We have been witnesses to it. We've been discussing it. And we've had Corinne Jean-Pierre tell us that it's a cheap fake and that the video that we saw in Normandy wasn't actually a video. Then they saw it for the first time themselves and they said, wait a sec, what is happening here on my television screen with this guy? They're the only people who are surprised. And so if we're going to argue that the audience is leaving them because they were lied to, well, that's giving a lot of credit to that audience, because very often people want to be lied to. And I don't mind giving them credit if it is indeed just and deserving. But that's the story. These people weren't wrong. People get things wrong. These people lied over and over and over, and they deserve every bit of derision they get.
Yeah, I think that's the point, is that it wasn't wrong. It's that they lied and they continue to, and people are voting now with their wallet and saying, why am I paying for the Washington Post when it's that wrong? Why am I paying for the LA Times, or why am I watching MSNBC when it's that wrong? I mean, I told people all the time, I get these phone calls and go, gosh, how did we miss it? And I'm like, we didn't. You did. You failed to have conversations with the people. And the funny thing is, I talk to this all the time. Like, when I was at the RNC for 6 years, there were some reporters who would sit down and say, explain me to your ground game. Give me some insight into the data operation. We would do it. We would hold these clinics where we'd do basically like a boot camp for reporters. And maybe 10 or 20 would show up of all the press corps. They don't even want to understand it. It's, well, we were told by the DNC and by Harris. And this is the problem, is that most of the folks in the media don't actually want to know the truth. And so they're making these assumptions about Donald Trump. I mean, Sarah, it's like, well, he's got to be a white supremacist, except for, wow, he's appointing all these people who are contrary to this. I mean, time and time again, look at the cabinet, folks. Look at the senior leadership. I mean, Mark Cuban accusing him of not having strong women around him. Uh-oh. I mean, I hope no one sees the pictures of all the strong women around him right now.
That's so true, Sean. And I remember being in some of these press pens covering the campaign this past year and hearing the reporters just talk to each other. Well, Trump has no ground game. There's no grassroots effort with the Trump campaign. And it was all because that's what the Kamala Harris campaign was telling the media, and they would just repeat it ad nauseum without talking to, like, I don't know, James Blair or anybody else on the Trump campaign who was actually running the ground game. It's so absurd. And Tony hit on something important here, which is there are two sort of buckets of people who are fleeing the media. And one of them is the people I mentioned who realize they were being lied to and don't like that very much and don't want to pay for it anymore. But he also alluded to the fact that there's this other group. And Sean, you talked about the fact that people are not subscribing to the Washington Post or canceling their subscriptions. A lot of those people actually are people who are mad that they did not endorse Kamala because they did not get the Washington Post to confirm their priors and go along with their delusion. And that broke them. So they had to leave the Washington Post. So there are these two groups. And because places like the Washington Post appeased those people for so long who just wanted their liberalism affirmed, they're now stuck between a rock and a hard place because they've lost both the normal people who want to be told the truth and the crazy people who are part of their progressive liberal subscriber base.
Which is, isn't that like what we see a lot from the Democrats? They do this all the time. They radicalize all of these people into these certain missions. You've got the climate change activists, you've got Black Lives Matter group, and they radicalize them to the extent that these people in power are never actually planning on implementing the things that they claim that they're going to implement. I mean, you had Black Lives Matter who wrote Joe Biden an angry letter, on like day one because they were pissed that he wasn't actually doing what they said that they were going to do. Same thing goes for the climate change activists. They radicalize all of their people. They radicalize these useful idiots with no intention of actually implementing all of these things. And then at a certain point, these useful idiots go, hey, wait a second. You're not actually doing what you said you were going to do. And so that's where the Washington Post finds themselves. It's just like, oh, crap. These little radicals are pissed that we didn't actually endorse the communists. And that's what you see time and time again with these Democrats.
All right, guys, great panel discussion. Amber, Tony, and Sarah, thank you guys for being here. A great way to kick off the week. Guys, for the rest of the week, we've got some senior transition officials joining us. I can't tell you yet, but just trust me on this. Tune in tomorrow. We always see you at 9 a.m. in the morning meeting, and then sign up for my newsletter, SeanSpicer.com. Appreciate the panel being with us. Have a great rest of your day. We'll see you back here tomorrow night. Thanks for being with us. Well, if you enjoyed this content, make sure to like this video, subscribe, and click the notification bell to get more.